Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. We have an awesome guest joining us again. Welcome back, Heather Watson. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks, Tracy. Really happy to be back. Happy to be chatting with you again.
Awesome. You guys have some really exciting things on the go at Farm Management Canada. And the first one we're going to talk about is the Farm Transition Guide, an amazing new tool that you guys launched. So before we dive into that, can you share a little bit more about who you are and who Farm Management Canada is?
Yeah, for sure. So who I am, I usually just talk about the organization, but so I'm Heather, and I'm Executive Director here at Farm Management Canada. I've been here for, I think, almost a dozen years now. So I would say agriculture and farm business management are certainly in my blood. Coming from a communications type background, synthesizing research into, practical outcomes and tools is the name of my game. And in terms of our organization, so we were started back in 1992, so just after the financial crisis of the 1980s, when interest rates soared and commodity prices tanked, looking at, okay, what can we do to help farmers better prepare for the unknown and uncertainty. And it was kind of agreed upon that, let's look at investing in business skills development and training and education around that. So that's where we came from, was basically to increase awareness, appreciation, and adoption of business practices on the farm, and to do all of the skills development opportunities around that, or certainly connect farmers with opportunities around that. And that remains our mandate today.
Awesome. And you guys do an amazing job of it. And I am especially excited about two of the new initiatives that you guys have just recently launched. And we're going to do an episode on each of them. Today, the Farm Transition Guide is what I want to chat with you about. As you know, one of the big reasons I started this show is succession planning. The financial management skills and succession planning due to some personal passions and personal experiences. So this Farm Transition Guide kind of hits close to home. I think there's so many farmers out there that want to plan, but just don't know the steps. We're always saying, hey, are you transition planning? But we haven't quite had the tools in one place. So with that being said, take it away. Tell us about the Farm Transition Guide.
Yeah, so I think you hit the nail on the head when you spoke about, having a place for all the stuff that's out there. So, we thought, we still have pretty low adoption rates in terms of farm transition planning. Still a lot of farms are struggling, and families are struggling, and both generations or all generations are struggling. And so, this is kind of a top priority for us. And it actually, we regularly, people say, oh, what tools are available and what's out there to help me? And it's kind of like, well, they've got this in Nova Scotia, they got this in BC, they got this in Manitoba. Where you located, we can kind of, help guide a path for you. But then I was actually at Farm Tech, I guess it was a couple years ago, and I had just watched a presentation with Merle Good and his daughter Inessa on transition planning. And afterwards, we were kind of just sitting back and having a little chat. And he said, why don't you guys just put everything together into one website on transition planning so that, it's all there in one place for people to find it. And so, I was kind of mulling that over, and I was like, oh, would people use it? But then as we started thinking about it more, I thought, well, yeah, we're asked those questions all the time. And, we're pretty good at figuring out or knowing who's doing what across the country. And so the idea was to put that together, but not just in terms of here's a smorgasbord of everything there is to know, but trying to provide some sort of navigation through it and trying to provide some sort of pathway, that gets you kind of through some of those, processes around, where am I going to go, so it's not assuming everyone's coming in at the same stage or age or attitude towards transition planning, but it's, here's resources for assessing your situation. So kind of figuring out where are you and what are your options, and then moving ahead from there towards, trying to develop a plan, as well as create a environment where, ideas are welcome, where there's positive communications, where there's, a good start in terms of interpersonal relationships with the folks there, but also, where do advisors come in, and where does tax planning come in, and where does, XYZ come in, legalities and things like that. So trying to kind of build that map for producers to work through the transition process or get unstuck, no matter where they are coming from, and whether they're the next generation of owners and operators and managers, or whether the current generation, or whether they're just thinking, I kind of want to get into farming, but I'm not quite sure how I could find a place. So covering off, we know that, the vast majority of farms in Canada are family owned and operated, but there's an increasing proportion of our future farmers that are not coming from the farm, and what are the opportunities for them, and how do they become part of the conversation of being part of building that future, especially as we kind of more and more come across families that don't have successors, don't have children interested in taking over the farm, but the current generation want to continue that legacy, want to continue honoring the land in the way that they have, and, those who came before them. So that's probably more than what you need to know, but that's where it came from and what we're trying to do. So we're not saying this is the bee's knees guide of, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's more, there's lots of different tools out there for different parts of your transition and succession planning. And we're trying to help you figure out what makes sense and when it makes sense.
I love it. And I know we said this, and I said the exact same thing in the last interview that we did together, pretending I'm farm mom. There's 2 things that are going to trip me up. One, the communication and just tackling that big conversation. And number 2, okay, that's great. We're all super busy. We don't really have time to do this, right? Because the farm's busy, but I do want to do it. But where do you start? So exactly. I think this tool is exactly what the industry needed to just help farmers along, right? Where are you at in the process? So,
and to kind of see that laid out as well. Like, so what does transition planning entail? Like, what are kind of the buckets that I need to fill with information to know that I'm looking at every aspect? So, using things like the 3-circle model, and just having that, we wholeheartedly believe in having that comprehensive approach where, things don't happen in a silo on the farm or in business management. And, what you do over here might affect what's happening over here. So just being conscious of the layers of complexity around transition planning. It's not simply just tax planning, although obviously that's an important part. But like you say, that the conversations and the conversation starters and the communications, and people looking for, how do I even bring this up to my parents, or how do I even bring this up to my children, and when should I, and is someone out there to help me through it?
Love it. So I think that is a good lead into the actual buckets, as you said. If people go to the website, it's farmtransitionguide, right? .com or .ca?
.ca.
.ca. Okay, I couldn't remember. I was just there yesterday, but I couldn't remember. So when they go to the website, it's broken out into different sections. And I want to get you to walk us through. I mean, there's so much in there, but let's just review each of those sections or stages, whatever we want to call them, starting with the first one that you guys labeled assess.
Yeah. Yeah. And so with assess, it's really that kind of situation analysis. Like, where are you in terms of your progress with transition or lack thereof, and some of the paths you're going down? So it's kind of broken out into two pieces. There's kind of a I guess I would say maybe traditional, family oriented, next generation type transition planning assessment piece. And so there's actually a tool in there called, choose your own transition plan. And it's kind of neat because it is an assessment tool, and you walk through a series of questions to figure out, kind of what transition path you're on, to kind of, X out some of those things you might not need to worry about or stress about. So it asks, have you started thinking about transition planning? Have you identified a successor or successors? Have you started grooming those successors? Have you, is the farm financially viable for transition right now? So some of those fundamental questions of how ready are you and where are you in terms of your transition planning process? And it's kind of almost like you imagine those choose your own adventure books. So yeah. It's like, okay, so, I'm Heather and I'm, almost 40, and, I've started thinking about transition planning, but I haven't identified my successor. So what are the things that I should focus on versus someone who's maybe a little further down the road, or someone who hasn't started down the road? So that's the one side of it. And then the other side of it is towards the we call it non-traditional, but I shouldn't even use that word, towards non-family transition planning. And so it's really cool because as we started developing this resource, we hooked up with the Young Agrarians, and they said, well, we're actually doing a farm transition toolkit as well. And we were like, oh man, like, oh no, but they're like, but it's for non-family transitions.
Okay.
So like, that's perfect because, now we have that element of non-family and family, and there's a lot of similarities. Of course, you need to have good communications, and a lot of the process is the same, but, the way in which the folks interact is different, and the way in which non-intergenerational transfer opportunities come about are quite different, and the conversations that have to be had, and the dynamics between people, of course, family versus non-family dynamics. So it's kind of neat that, it's not just about all family transition, but recognizing there's this growing group of, future farmers that, didn't come from a farm, but they want to be the future of farming. So yeah, so working through those, where am I, and, what do I need to figure out in order to take the next step?
Perfect. Great lead in. So after you assess, you guys have a section devoted to developing the plan. So take it away.
Yeah, so developing the plan, we've got lots of resources, because there are resources out there that walk you through the development of a plan. Some are more simple, some are more complex. For example, Nova Scotia has 7 steps to farm transition, and it's all online. But maybe if that's not your thing, Alberta and Manitoba have a really complex, comprehensive kind of guide to transition planning that even walks you through the process of getting your farm business in the right place to be ready to transition. So it's almost like 2 plans in one, a business plan and a transition plan.
Nice.
But then there's also, other simple tools like, checklists and questions that you should ask yourself and you should ask your family. So there's planning tools as well as, fill in the blanks. Like, here's the things that we need to sort out, and let's start putting some of those pieces in place. So let's have a conversation about this, or let's assess our finances and see, how we could support transition on our farm or some of the things we might need to do. So it talks about the planning process itself and all the steps in that, but then it also has links to Elaine Fraze, of course, you know her very well. We know and love her. And she's got tons and tons of tools in terms of getting the conversation started, effective communication, coming together to talk about values. And so there's kind of that communication side, which we really want to emphasize because oftentimes it's not the technical pieces that get people snagged up. And I think you mentioned this earlier. It's how do I even talk to mom and dad? Or, I've talked to them and they've shut me out. Now what do I do? So, tools and tricks to kind of, help make some progress there, as well as areas like financial management and legal and access to advisors that specialize in transition planning to kind of help you in that planning process. So we tried to think of, what are all the tools that need to be in your toolkit when you're ready to start developing your plan and putting them into that section.
That is so fantastic. I cannot even say it enough how happy I am that you guys developed this. Even myself, who works with advisors and knows the process, I look at this and go, oh my gosh, how big and overwhelming for people. I'm so glad that you brought it all into one place to help people along. It is just such a relief. That's awesome. Okay, so assess, develop, plan, and then the third step is implementing the plan.
Yeah, so implementation. We have the plan developed. So implementation really focuses on what procedures, what processes, what pieces can you put in place to kind of get things going and keep things going. So maintain the momentum. So there's lots of tools in there for conflict resolution, again, for communications, because it's one thing to have a plan, but then, what practices can you put in place so that it doesn't just sit on a shelf, so that it's actually being used and referenced. And when things change on the farm, you're going, oh, wait a second. Did we account for that in our plan? Do we need to adjust our plan? So it includes things like calculators to figure out, okay, so we're into our transition plan, and how is this looking on the financial side? How is this looking on the legal side? And then also, I almost lost my train of thought. I'm like, oh no. But also thinking about, transition planning in terms of, can you find a way to almost set regular meetings, or how often can you revisit the plan or need to revisit the plan to kind of work it into your, I don't want to say everyday farming, but work it into your business plan. So the two are kind of going hand in hand. So when you're making investment decisions, you're thinking, how does this affect transition and the next generation, whether they're family or not? And so kind of setting those pieces in place as you move through the process to maintain momentum, but also reference back and adjust the plan as you need to. Maybe there's a falling out, maybe there's a new marriage, maybe there's some, new family members added, or there's, a team member that's really starting to shine, and you want to figure out, okay, does our plan still make sense within the current context of the business? Mm-hmm. And at what point do we need to adjust things? So, to keep things going, keep it trucking.
That is excellent. So assess, develop the plan, implement the plan, and you even have a section called Inspire. Can you touch on that?
Yeah. So, and it's funny because this was probably, the first piece that came to mind, because I thought, well, we don't need to create a brand new guide or a brand new tool, like, something that's different from everything else. And that's, why we just decided, let's bring everything together in kind of a organized way. But when our minds went to how can we really help with transition, I thought, well, there's so many articles. Like you flip through Country Guide on any given day, or Grain News, or Alberta Farmers Express. And, you see those transition and succession stories all the time. But I was like, well, we should start kind of collecting those, like, and putting them in there to say, you don't have to run around or wait till the next issue or whatever it is. We can link directly to that. But then there's also, there's some really cool programs out there for linking opportunities too. So be inspired by the fact that Young Agrarians has like a farm management mentorship program that's designed to kind of help the next generation understand how to manage the farm. And there's programs in Quebec. There's a program called La Terre, which is about kind of matchmaking between farmers that are ready to transition who don't have someone to take over and finding someone to take over, as well as FarmLink, and there's some other different tools out there too. So it's kind of like, the programs that are out there to help facilitate that and inspire through mentorship, and then also, training and educational programs. So Elaine has, I know, Get Unstuck in Farm Transition online course, and there's tons of opportunities out there too, webinars and used to be conferences, but virtual events now. And then as well, we've done a ton of research on this stuff. So having somewhere to put that, because we think, of course, this guide was designed for farmers, but oftentimes we get asked, like, how serious is the problem? Or, do you see a light at the end of the tunnel? And so putting some of our research around, the adoption rates for transition planning, but also some of the barriers that producers are facing and demographic differences, and then the drivers that we hear too. Why are you doing this? So that we can kind of help others use these messages to encourage the promotion and adoption of transition planning.
Excellent. And again, I'll say it, before, there's so many great advisors and companies with transition programs, but I think everything's a little bit fractured or siloed. Now I love here, I'm a big fan of, we don't need to compete. We get to create together, because you guys at Farm Management Canada, us here at the Impact Farming Show, Elaine, BDO, Myers Norris Penny, whoever is working with farmers on transition, we're all working to help an industry transition billions of dollars in assets. So it's great that we have one starting point where people can go find some information, really kind of get a grounding, right? Because I find, and I've done it myself, and it's very uncomfortable and very unnerving to go, oh my goodness, I got to call an advisor, but I don't know at all what I'm talking about. And because nobody likes to admit they don't know something, what do? We go, okay, let's deal with that later, right?
Yeah.
Because it's uncomfortable, and we push that stuff away. Oh, we got to go do chores. Well, it's harvest time. Let's deal with it after, on holidays. But holidays are busy, right? So I really like that this is a great point with information. People can dig in, learn, get some grounding, get some knowledge, and then bring in some advisors when you have you don't need to be an expert, but I like to know what I'm talking about when I reach out to an advisor and say, hey, I am at this spot. I need this. What do you think? So that's what I really like about this. I find this to be that core piece that was missing for our industry. So kudos to you guys. That is a huge accomplishment for you guys and our industry. So thank you.
And I would mention too, for our partners too, everything we do depends on finding those industry partners that believe in us out there. So Farm Credit Canada and MNP were partners on this, as well as the Government of Canada. So it's nice to know, those big guys are out there and they're behind this too. And they're, they're helping, like, they both have their own farm transition pieces, but recognizing that, if we're truly helping the farmer, we need to make sure that the farmer is aware of all the options out there. And I think, looking at the breadth and scope of the website, of kind of the toolkit, which is what we call it internally, gives you a sense of, what are the pieces I need to worry about, so that, before you think about working with an advisory, like you said, Tracy, you have some sense of, the different pieces of the puzzle. And hopefully that can help you kind of assess, is this advisor the right one for me? I mean, there's tools on there to help too. There's tools on how to choose an advisor and how to fire your advisor or whatever it is. But, to kind of give you that sense, because I'm much like you. I like to do a little bit of research just to know, what are the main headings I need to be worrying about here? And not to be an expert in it. Of course, that's why they're hired, but just, are we talking about family as well as business, as well as ownership? And are we treating them fairly, and all that wonderful stuff? So, yeah.
I love it. Okay. Those were some pretty good words of wisdom right there. I don't know if you have anything to add, any words of wisdom, encouragement to farmers in the audience before we work to wrap the episode up.
Yeah, I think I would just say, I think every good venture, especially if there's, kind of blanks or uncertainties in your mind, starts with a good assessment. So, whether it's choose your own farm transition assessment on the website or, there's more comprehensive, whole business assessments, I think kind of, comparing yourself to the boxes that should be checked by the farm is a really good place to start. And also, I think the assessment can lead to really interesting conversations between members of the family or members of the farm and different generations. So if, a lot of times when we're talking about planning in general, a lot of farmers tell us, oh yeah, it's all up here, don't worry about it. But I think the assessment is a really good way of finding out, well, who have you shared that dream with, or who have you shared those plans with, and creating some sense of future, but looking at it in terms of, okay, we all want this farm to succeed. We're not sure who's going to play what role, but let's start having those conversations to figure out, what can be your role, and then having that, like, I can't stress enough, having the time frame to actually reorient yourself and reorient the team towards what the farm needs going forward is huge. Like, trying to do a transition plan in a year, just, kind of forget about it. It's not going to be as effective as looking, okay, I'm thinking of transitioning in 10 to 15 years, and working some of those measures in place now is just so much more effective, because there's so many pieces to the puzzle, but it makes it a lot easier to see the bigger picture when you're kind of, out front of it instead of, with your nose up close to it. And, perhaps facing issues with stress and anxiety and feeling rushed and worrying about the decisions you're making. The best thing that farmers can do is just give themselves as much time as they can with this process. I don't mean give yourself time and delay. Don't procrastinate, but just, start small, but get started. And I think assessment is a really good place to start to figure out, where am I? And maybe you're further along than you thought. And that could be a very, very good thing.
Excellent. Amazing words of wisdom. You go, girl. Okay, so that wraps it up. Thank you so much for joining and sharing a little bit more about the tool guide. If people want to find out more, can you share where they need to visit and how they can get in touch with you guys if they have any questions?
Yeah, so this one's fairly easy. It's farmtransitionguide.ca. And I should mention that it's a bilingual tool because we're a national organization. So it's available in English as well as French. So we've kind of scoped out all of the French resources out there too, and bringing them in. And what would be a really cool project is if we could start doing some translation between the two, but that's for another day. So farmtransitionguide.ca. And then, of course, if you want to reach out to us, there's Farm Management Canada's main site. It'll also be housed kind of linked with our National Farm Business Management Resource Center. So that's at takeanewapproach.ca. I know I'm throwing out a lot of URLs, but yeah, it should be fairly easy to find. And of course, we're Farm Management Canada on social media, and our corporate website is fmc-gac.com.
Perfect. And we will put links to everything you just said in the show notes as well. So if you're listening, watching, and you missed that, check the show page and you can connect with all those great tools there. So Heather, thank you so much. I always enjoy when you come on the show. You have so much passion for helping farmers around farm business management. I love it. Succession planning. I think you and I, we just have that same passion. Exactly.
Yeah.
The farm business, the succession, helping farmers succeed. So I always love our conversations. Thank you for joining us. And we will have you back for another episode. So tune in the audience. If you guys like the episode, like it, share it, and get the word out there so people can benefit from Heather's message and the great tools that they're putting out there. So thank you, Heather, and thank you guys for joining us. Bye.
Thanks so much. Bye.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.